encourage economic development in the state, and partly by restricting the rights of people to vote on comprehensive plan and development orders. And you may remember back in 2006, the small town democracy movement in St. Pete Beach. First, the people in St. Pete passed it, then it failed on a statewide level, and then it was repealed in St. Pete. And all of that 2006-2010 timeframe led to the legislature passing amendments to this state law 3 years in a row, 2011, 2012, and 2013. And each time, they were tightening up more and more, restricting more and more the right of people to vote on certain comprehensive land use decisions. And it came to a head again this year, and the city of Boca Raton had litigation, very similar situation where there was a referendum, and they, along with other folks, got the legislature to pass another amendment to that law that in effect says that the election that was held in Lake Worth just a few months ago is null and void. And that's the language that the legislature uses, null and void, and that any comprehensive plan change that any charter amendment that affects a comprehensive plan change is null and void. So in essence, the legislature has stated that in this instance, that a democratic right of the people to vote is not paramount. That the legislature is going to take that and say, no, this is an area that, for whatever reasons, economic development, we want to ensure business climate, get out of the economic situation that we've been in. So that's the situation. And the law itself is about as clear as you're going to get this kind of law. An initiative or referendum process in regards to any local comprehensive plan or amendment or map amendment is prohibited. That's pretty strong, prohibited. It doesn't say maybe, kind of, sort of, it's just prohibited. And then later on, it talks about what applies to us. A general local government charter provision for initiative referendum process is not sufficient. That's what we have in our charter. We have a general charter provision that allows people to have an initiative or a referendum. That's not sufficient. And the reason they had this little playing of the words is there's another town called Yankeetown. Yankeetown had a very specific charter provision from years ago that dealt with land use issues. So the legislature was trying to carve out Yankeetown because there was a lawsuit with Yankeetown. So Yankeetown is okay, but pretty much every other city in the state, there might be 2 or 3 other exceptions, you cannot do this. And Lake Worth is among the vast majority of cities that have a general charter provision, not a specific land use referendum charter provision. And then the legislature goes on to the next paragraph and says that this applies retroactively. So any initiative or referendum process commenced after June 1, 2011 is hereby deemed null and void and of no legal force and effect. Again, you don't get much stronger words than that in the law than null and void and of no legal force and effect. And our referendum here was in March 2013, after June 1st, 2011. So in essence, that referendum here is null and void. The charter should not be changed. The clerk should not codify the charter changes. And you should not pass a comprehensive plan amendment because it's null and void. So you cannot do this tonight. So my recommendation is that you not move forward with this comprehensive plan amendment tonight.
Commissioner McLean?
I appreciate your clarification, and I certainly am not an attorney by any means, and even less of a land use attorney, but I do follow the part about black and white. Looks pretty black and white. What I'm less clear on is, are there, well, there's 2 things. One is the legal side of it is, this seems to fly strongly in the face of something that the Florida League of Cities seems to support in a strong way, which is home rule concept. It says that municipalities ought to be able to do things that affect them locally and don't affect the rest of the state. They ought to be able to have quite a bit of autonomy in making their own decisions. And this would fly in the face of that. So I guess one question that I would have is if Yankeetown managed to get the carved out exception, what's to prevent us from saying we would like to do what we want to do in our community, and let's go about making sure that we can do that?
Well, it's certainly possible to go back and lobby the legislature to try and amend this law again. Again, this is this law's been changed 3 years in a row. And I've not followed this, any particular other than recently. And you can see that, I know Boca Raton, for example, because I spoke to this attorney a couple weeks ago. They very committed to lobbying to get this law changed, to overturn their court decision, because they lost in court locally. They did a comprehensive plan, a charter amendment, and it was challenged, and Boca Raton lost. They wanted to be able to have the commission control the land use, not the citizens. They lost, and they went to the legislature, and they were among the leaders of the group that got this law changed again. And I spoke to their attorney, and it was very much similar to what we went through in Lake Worth.
Well, I guess.
So I guess cities are split. You go Florida League of Cities, I'm not sure where the Florida League of Cities would come down in this, but you got some cities that lobby for it, and some cities that lobbied against it, apparently.
And I do understand that, and I appreciate the clarification that in the case of Boca, the commission there apparently felt that they should make the decisions on land use, not their citizenry, and they actually, when they lost the court case, went to the legislature and said, hey, can you undo this? I want to be extremely clear that in my case, as a commissioner, I was elected by the citizenry, and I heard very, very consistently from our community that we want to have control of what our community looks like, and we'll go out, and we'll petition, and we'll do what it takes, and we'll get an election. And I find it extremely offensive that folks in Tallahassee would say, no, you can't decide what your community looks like. So I would hope that we as a commission would stand very firmly behind our citizenry and say they have spoken. There's not much black and white shades on that, or gray shades on that. They've spoken, and I think it's our responsibility to do whatever we can, whether we need to take legal action or whatever we need to do to make sure that we follow through on that. That's my position.
Vice Mayor?
What happens if we do nothing? What happens if we just act like we didn't get the memo?
In other words, you don't take any action on the comprehensive plan either. It just basically dies for lack of moving forward. It's on the agenda tonight. If there's no motion to approve it, it would just die. And so the charter amendment by that statute is null and void, so it doesn't exist. Right? When the courts use the word void in law, there's two versions of it. There's voidable and there's void. Voidable means you did something that a court could set aside. Void means it's as if it never happened. It's unlike a do-over in baseball, or when you were a kid playing a sport, on a do-over. That's what void is. It's a do-over. It didn't even count. That strike three didn't count. You're going to get another chance, or you've lost a chance in this case. So it's about the strongest words that you can use in the legal world is null and void. It didn't happen.
So if I'm keeping up with you, it doesn't matter if we ignore the memo or we move forward with this. It is what it is. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
In essence, yeah. I mean, I don't want to tell you that it doesn't matter what you do, but if you do anything contrary to this, your action is going to be null and void as well, because the legislature has already spoken. This may not be a good analogy, but think of civil rights. There may have been laws in states that permitted segregation back in the 40s and the 50s. And then, 1964, the Civil Rights Act happened. Says, now the federal government saying there shall be no discrimination in America. So the town of XYZ may have had a law saying we're having discrimination. That law is null and void because Congress acted. So a higher authority has acted and said this is the law in the state of Florida.
The more challenging question I have then would be this. If we went forward with this and implemented what the citizens voted for, what are the ramifications?
Again, it's hard as a lawyer to say, how do you vote for something that the legislature has already said is null and void? And if you were to vote for it at this point, there's actually a court case where this happened in the town of Ponce Inlet. As I said, this has been a statewide issue. We're not unique in Lake Worth on this issue. Town of Palm Beach, Boca Raton, Yankee Town, many, many towns have been dealing with this issue. Ponce Inlet had a referendum issue, like we did. It passed. The commission passed a comprehensive plan. And the court in that case says that the comprehensive plan, let's find the basis of null and void, but let's find their words. with respect to the ordinance conforming the comprehensive plan to the referendum, that's what we'd be doing, right? Conforming the comprehensive plan to the referendum, it only makes sense to hold the ordinance invalid as well. That's what the word said. So they held the referendum invalid, and then they held the ordinance invalid. Because to implement an invalid law, an invalid referendum, is just as invalid as the first act. So if this is not legal, by passing the comprehensive plan, doesn't make it any more legal. It's simply not legal. I think it's unusual to have so many court cases and so much legislative action in one area in a short period of time. I mean, you've seen these cases just pop up one after the other because town commissions are struggling just like you are. You know, the right of the people to vote, as I read from that Palm Beach case, is paramount except when the legislature restricts that right. And that's what's really happening here.
Commissioner Boyd?
A question. This bill, I guess it is, says that an initiative in regard to these things is prohibited, and you've clarified that if we were to make a change to our comprehensive plan based on that initiative, that too would be null and void or prohibited or whatever.
Yeah, based on that concept.
Let me ask a question. And this is a legal question. It won't be phrased real well, but I'll do my best. This says that very specific things are null and void.
Correct.
But it does not actually say what communities can do separate from initiatives and referenda. If our commission wants to make a change to our comprehensive plan, this doesn't say anything about that. It just says if you do it in relation to an initiative.
Correct.
So what would there be legally to prevent this commission from saying, look, we put our ears to the ground, we are elected officials duly sworn to represent our community, we have heard through the grapevine that you all would like a certain flavor here, and we are going to make comprehensive plan amendments that are generally in touch with that thing.
Well, in general.
And we can do whatever we want with that as a commission, correct?
Right. In general, the commission, through their staff, will go ahead and do a whole comprehensive plan amendment process. It would go through whatever Williams Department does in terms of gathering data. It would go through planning and zoning, there'd be the quasi-judicial hearing, and then there would be the comprehensive plan amendment. So yes, the commission still have that authority, but you can't base it on the referendum. In other words,
But we can, if we decide, okay, let's say that the referendum said heights are 45 feet, and we decide that we as a commission would like, direct our staff, that we would like the heights in downtown to be 44 feet.
and they say,
We can do
go
that.
ahead and do that whole process and bring it back to you at some point in the future.
Or 44 and a half, or whatever you want. But we are not in any way constrained. We could say, we as a commission want to be proactive and represent what we hear in the community, and we could do that, correct?
That could be, yes, that could be comprehensive plan amendments that initiated through the normal process. Again, I wouldn't recommend moving forward tonight, because tonight is basically.
Right, no, I understand that.
referendum. It would be
Right.
a new process that would be initiated to amend the comprehensive plan, whether it's making the height 92 feet, 42 feet, right, making the width certain. Any comprehensive plan amendment could still move forward through the normal process, but it cannot be based on the referendum or initiative.
William, do you have anything to add?
No, actually. You did a great job summarizing what I did.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Commissioner Zerdy?
Thank you. Yeah, William, I mean, if there is a theoretical process, there's some initiative to go down. But personally, I always thought that the wording on this whole thing was confusing and not comprehensive. It was very specific to not protect the charm of our whole city. It excluded all the neighborhoods. And so if we were to look at something, it'd probably be looking at all the neighborhoods from what I was hearing out there. So if we were to explore that, how long of a process does that take? About if things were to not, I mean, generally speaking, you go down this whole process, what kind of a range of time would you estimate just off the cuff tonight, sorry?
If it were undertaken in-house with staff, I cannot give you an estimate of time. I just let the city mayor know that I've lost another person in planning and zoning, the resignation was tendered today. So I'm down 2 members of staff. I don't have anyone work on a comprehensive plan amendment, so it would have to be an outside consulting firm, we'd have to do an RFP, do a solicitation, do a selection. We'd have to find the money to actually pay for that outside consultant. That selection process would probably be anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And then it would probably be a 6 month to a year time frame to do the required workshops, citizens input, preparation of draft amendments, findings of fact, the required public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Board, the Historic Resource Preservation Board, and then come to the City Commission. They would have to vote, then it goes up to the Department of Economic Opportunity for at that point, a large-scale review, which is sent to all the review bodies, including Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, Southwest Water Management District, Lake Forest District, a lot of those. So it would probably be, at this point, an 18-month-long process. Because essentially it would be what started us way back when, in 2005, an evaluation and analysis review, which is the year-based amendment. We would have to do something very similar to that. But what we just finished back in August, which was built on what was done in 2009, has height limits in it for almost the entire city. There are height caps in it in a table. The one that seems to be the bone of contention is whether 45 or 65 is going to be allowed east of Federal Highway and above 45 feet in some of the areas that are the TOD, Transportation-Oriented Development. I brought the copy of the table, and it's got a height cap in every single zoning district or land use district.
When you say east of Federal Highway from where north and where south?
2nd Avenue North to 1st Avenue South.
Okay.
That 16 block area.
So that would, I'm sorry, just one, so and during this time, paralleling on this, we already have a lot of investment in our land development regulations. In order to get things going with people to invest in our projects in the city, we already have LDRs that are hopefully trying to get finished and completed near the end of the summer or early fall.
You're going to be hearing the first public hearing on July 16th.
Right, so so those already have this information in there. And so I guess I'm just saying, not only is that time period, which, is something that we could investigate and look at, but I personally don't want to delay what we've been trying to knit together for a long time here. The city as a whole, not being here that long, but it's just been something that you've been working on for a year and a half.
8 years in October.
Right, all together in the city's effort. So I just think this is something to clarify this, but that was the reason why this was held up the last meeting before. Just sort of we have a thought, wanted to have an understanding of the time involved and for some of these things to take place. Thank you very much.
And I wanted to just piggyback on that. So we've been working land development and comp plan about 8 years. Where are we in the time span now? You said it's coming in July. What's the end timeline?
Well, if you vote,
An estimation.
If you vote to move forward on the second reading, the second public hearing for the LDRs, that will happen on August 6th. If it's approved, it will be in effect 10 days later.
Okay, so we're almost at an end.
You're
and then-
basically about 5 weeks away.
And then if we're looking at anything else, that's a whole new process.
Yes.
Okay.
Vice Mayor?
No, I don't have anything right now, thanks.
Commissioner McCoy?
I would just like to point out that we started the earlier part of our commission meeting today with the focus on history and that we're 100 years old and that we have a certain character, and I believe we even read a proclamation that emphasized character. And while I certainly seem to have said something bad because I turned the lights on, but I certainly recognize that we've also had a big part of our meeting that talked about, said something good, that talked about crime in the city and concern about buildings that are not in good shape. And I think there's a general feeling in the community that if we can pull ourselves up economically, that would generally be a good thing and would help reduce crime, and we want to go in that direction. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. At the same time, I would very strongly caution us that we think long-term. Once you've gone to a certain flavor as a community, particularly as you've gone to certain heights, it's very, very difficult to go backwards. So you want to make sure that if you've heard, we as elected officials have heard clearly from our citizens as to what they would like their community to be. I believe we have a very, very high bar of responsibility to somehow find a mechanism to incorporate that. Doesn't mean that you stop all economic development or stop even any economic development. Just make sure that, and I think I've said things in this general direction before, it is our responsibility to get a sense of what the community wants and then make sure we find a mechanism to do it. Let's not find excuses why it'll take too long, or we don't have enough this, or we don't have enough that, or any number of reasons. You can always find reason not to do it. But a community that makes, as their elected officials, makes it their business to know what the community wants and act on it is going to be a much stronger community. And that's what we should be doing.
All I can say about it is that we have put in place through the comprehensive plan and through the upcoming land development regulations, a lot of the things. This is, I don't have a dog in this fight on either side of the fence other than the fact that I just want the city to succeed. And I want there to be, economic development in this community. And I think that we had some really good conversations from the very start of when I arrived here in this position. And I think that compromise has always been there and possible and has been reached on many, many levels. I think that we have mechanisms in place to protect the heights, that are there. And if this commission should choose to do so in regards to making changes to the comprehensive plan, then so be it. We'll vote on that to do so. In the meantime, we have always had these mechanisms from the start of our conversations together. We've always had mechanisms in place to prevent big tall buildings from being here or skyscrapers from taking over the city. The only areas that there have been in contention really is the east of Federal Highway area, which is just in the downtown, and the west Dixie Highway area. And those are the two places, and I think through these discussions and through the finalization of the land development regulations, we have to go back and make some changes because of this news, then we sit down and talk about that. And I wish that we could have sat down and talked about this a lot longer in the very beginning, so we didn't have to turn the situation into a contentious argument and everything else that happened on top of it. I think that, we need to keep talking until we come to a solution and not fight each other and deal with it. And I know that this situation, brings a change of events, but I think that maybe this is a way for us to get back on that same page and have those conversations and put those mechanisms in place to make sure that the will of the people is protected. And I think that we've always, I know I can only speak for myself, I know I have always wanted that from the very beginning, because I think everyone has the best interests of the city at heart. But we can't continue in the way that we have done. If we don't make some changes and encourage investment in some ways while still maintaining our charm, we're going to be in trouble. I mean, my State of the City address, I didn't like to stand up there and tout those stats that I did at that. That was not the cheerleader I wished I could have been at that. But we cannot get better until we understand and accept what we are. We have to be honest about who we are and where we're at if we're going to improve. We can't float, I can't be a cheerleader when there's bad stuff happening, like crime in your neighborhood, things that are going. We have to really attack these situations head on, and we have to be truthful about what's going on and who we are. And then we can fix it. It's not going to be by yelling at one another, it's not going to be by fighting one another, it's going to be about coming together and putting our heads together, because all in all, everybody wants the same thing. And if this gets us back to a point of talking and getting where I think we could have been from the very beginning, then so be it. Like I said, I believe there were mechanisms already in place to help us to prevent big tall skyscrapers from happening anywhere, and to talk about some areas that could be primed for investment that certainly won't jeopardize anybody's quality of life. And I think we should talk about those conversations in an upcoming meeting. But in the interim, the item on the agenda tonight is this ordinance, which strictly according to the city attorney suggests that we not move forward on it. So I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to not move forward on the ordinance before us.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any public comment cards?
Yes.